So when people talk about the Western world and the foundations of the Western world, they will sometimes refer to the Judeo-Christian values. And there are some people, some Christians, it seems, who I would say seem to have a bit of an anti-Jewish temperament, who don't like this term. They say it's Christian values, Christian civilization. That's what built the West. And Ben Shapiro is asked about this, confronted about this by someone in a speech he was giving. I want to show you the person speaking to Ben's reaction, and I'll also give you my own follow-up thoughts on this, because a lot of people are actually talking about this recently, and it kind of represents an interesting kind of cultural discussion and battle. Have a watch.
Good evening, Mr. Shapiro. You have consistently promoted the idea that America was built on Judeo-Christian values. However, as a devout Christian, I have difficulty accepting the term, given Judaism's rejection of Jesus. Christians believe Jesus Christ is God. In contrast, the Talmud, a central Jewish holy book, teaches that Jesus is burning in hellfire and excrement. And while the New Testament tells us to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us, Sovrim 15 of the Talmud states that even the best of the Gentiles should be killed. Given these irreconcilable differences, why do you insist on using this oxymoronic term?
Okay, so first of all, that's a really bad read of the Talmud. Second of all, the notion that you can cite any text in support of the idea that Judaism broad writ is somehow disdainful or hateful of Christians or of people who are not Jewish is, in fact, a tremendous misread of Judaism over the centuries and particularly today. I can cite sections in the New Testament that I find personally problematic. I can certainly cite segments in the Quran that I find personally problematic. The truth is, I could probably find places in the Old Testament that I find personally problematic. That does not speak to what Judaism is and its historic impact on the world. Judaism is the foundation of Christianity. Jesus himself acknowledged this. The New Testament acknowledges this. The notion that Judaism and Christianity are somehow completely delinked and teach two completely separate lessons ignores the fact that the Old Testament is part and parcel of the New Testament. Sure, Christians and Jews think different things, of course. Otherwise, I'd be a Christian or you'd be a Jew. If we thought completely the same thing, then presumably we would have the exact same religion. But the notion that Judaism and Christianity are completely delinked is wrong. As far as miscitations from the Talmud, or even citations of texts that are written in the year 500 CE at a time when Jews were being persecuted by Christians in the Roman Empire, that seems to me a real stretch to get to the idea that Jews today are overall hateful of Christians. I'm not sure that there's anybody in America, personally speaking, who has pushed more people back to church than me. I really don't know that there is anybody who's done that. I tell Christians literally all the time to go to church. I tell Christians all the time to re-engage with their faith. I think it is deeply, deeply important that they do. I don't try to convert people to Judaism because that's actually forbidden in Jewish law. I'm not supposed to convert people to Judaism. So I know there's a group of people who spend all day online cherry-picking bad lines from the Talmud, a text that they have no familiarity with, and then trying to spin that into a giant myth about how Jews are seeking the extermination of Christians or some other bizarre conspiracy theory. It's a lie, it's stupid, and the Judeo-Christian values of the nation are quite real because, once again, Judaism and Christianity have an awful lot in common.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm going to do just that. So first of all, the principle that he seems to be getting across and suggesting is that Judaism, Torah, Jewish belief, is in some way hostile or against the very existence of non-Jews. This is so utterly preposterous. It was the Jewish people, it was Torah, Judaism, that first brought and articulated the idea to the world of every single human being created in the image of God, Jew or non-Jew. The idea of the sanctity of every single human life that we all accept as a basic value today, well, most people, I would hope, that comes from the Torah, from what the Jewish people brought to the world. You know, the other foundations of the Western civilization, ancient Greece and ancient Rome, they didn't believe in the sanctity of every single human life. They practiced infanticide. They killed people for sport in the Colosseums. They glorified war. The Jewish people were the first to articulate, and still to this day teach this notion that all human beings are sacred. Jews have a particular role and non-Jews have a particular role. So it's an utterly false, I would say, misconception that this person seems to have. the Jewish people were the first to articulate this idea of nation shall not lift sword against nation, neither shall they practice war anymore. That's a vision for world peace articulated by Isaiah. If Jews didn't hold other nations in much high esteem or care about them and say kill every last one, why would they have this? Why would Isaiah articulate this vision for world peace, which, by the way, the United Nations ironically has on their wall in New York, because even they seem to understand who first articulated this idea. Why would there be commandments for non-Jews? There's many commandments, mitzvot, that apply to non-Jews, we believe. Why would there be that? Why would we want to kill kill non-Jews if there was that? The Torah Parsha, the Torah portion in which the Ten Commandments is given, is named after Jethro, who was a non-Jew. And because of his righteousness, and he eventually converted, became part of the Jewish people, we name this Torah portion, Torah reading, in his honor. The great-grandmother of King David, who was the forerunner to the Messiah, is Ruth, who was a non-Jew who became a convert. Part of the story of the Exodus from Egypt, why God keeps saying to Pharaoh, let the Jews go. Why didn't God just, freeze Pharaoh and let them go? Is because God actually wants all of human beings to choose good and to do good. The same is true in the story of Jonah and Nineveh. There is a very, where Jonah has to go and tell Nineveh to repent. Yes, there is a particularist element to Torah and Jewish practice and Judaism, but there's also very much a universalist element and universal morality that the Jewish people actually first introduced to the world. Our vision that we pray for every day is all the nations coming to recognize the truth and recognizing God and living in harmony together and practicing goodness. So when you pinpoint specific Talmudic quotes, it's just so ridiculous. The things he quoted have absolutely no basis in Jewish law. They're talking about very specific circumstances of active warfare, and they need to be understood in their context and what the particular words mean. But when you just pluck things out of thin air, it really, without the context and also understanding the deep Jewish persecution that existed at the time when certain conversations were happening, then you just lose any understanding, and you can create all kinds of nonsense. I'll put in the video description, by the way, a link to an interview I did with Rabbi Daniel Rowe where he goes through all kinds of Talmudic quotes that are plucked out and said, oh, look how terrible this is. And he goes through them. It was in the light of Dan Bilzerian, an anti-Semitic online influencer, who was showing all these quotes. And he goes through them one by one. But I'm not going to do that now. But the key point number one, is that Torah introduced to the world this idea of all human beings being sacred, all human beings having a unique role, and that you find that everywhere in the Torah and Jewish tradition and Jewish morality, and the world that we pray for every day in our prayers. When we say the Aleinu prayer, which is one of the Hebrew prayers we say at the end of our prayers every single day, 3 times a day, is this prayer that all nations shall live in harmony, shall understand the truth. Why would we be saying that if we didn't hold non-Jews in similar esteem and believe in the dignity and sanctity of everyone? So that's the next point that I have to go to, where I find this all just gets a little bit silly and ridiculous, is that I think more important than words is actually actions. And he seems to be saying, you seem to have all this hostility towards non-Jews and Christians, which, as I said, doesn't bear out in truth, doesn't bear out in the way Jewish people have behaved for thousands of years, doesn't represent our texts, our Torah, the ideas we brought to the world. But the irony is, if I may say so, and forgive me for saying this, but it's actually, if you look at persecution towards people of not their religion, and specifically, if I may say, Christian persecution to Jews throughout history, there's no comparison. There's literally millions of bodies that have been killed, rivers of blood done, and I'm saddened to say this because I know we have many Christian supporters. I know that Christianity does an immense amount of good and shares many of the values of Judaism, of Torah, but if you want to be talking about hostility, if you want to be talking about prejudice, if you want to be talking about hating people who don't have your faith. It's not about Jews against Christians. Actually, history tells us that it has been Christians who have invoked Christianity to kill and persecute Jews, from blood libels to the Inquisitions to ghettos, pogroms, crusades. It's almost laughable that Ben is being the one being pushed on this, whereas it could be and should be the other way around. But I think it's a testament to the Jewish people that we don't focus on the past, we don't focus on these things, and actually really celebrate the fact that there's much improved Jewish-Christian relations today. So it's just a bit ridiculous, to be honest, to be getting it the other way around. And I would also say as well that when people get upset about this Judeo-Christian thing, using that terminology, as Ben rightly says, the 3/4 of Christianity's holy book is the Jewish Old Testament, as they refer to it, the Torah. So I don't understand the hang-up. Where did they get their ideas from? So many of their ideas of ethical monotheism, the ideas of sanctity of every human life, peace as an ideal, family values, justice and equality before the law, social responsibility, taking care for the poor and the needy, the importance of education as a human right. It's particularly ironic to hear this coming from an American Christian, because the founders of America were actually specifically inspired by the Hebrew Bible. Not the New Testament as much, but the Hebrew Bible. It's incredible. I'll also put a link to another video where I explain this in more detail. I'll put that in the video description. There is so much evidence and historical documentation of the fact that many of the founders of America looked to the Hebrew Bible as the blueprint for the kind of society they wanted to create in the new America. They saw themselves as creating the new chosen people, the new promised land, Zion 2.0. Many of the founders wanted Hebrew to be the national language rather than English. They saw themselves, I think it was Benjamin Franklin who proposed the emblem of America being the splitting of the sea, and it would say disobedience to tyrants, aka Pharaoh, and now we're thinking about also the British King, is obedience to God. There were many some of the universities that were set up would have Hebrew in their symbols. They wanted to learn Hebrew. The notion of Eric Nelson, actually, an academic, writes about this, that the notion of having 3 branches of government, the judiciary, the executive and legislative branches, was inspired by the Hebrew Bible's recommendation of having a separation of powers between the priests, the court, and the king. So the irony is that actually it's not just like that Christianity, yes, comes from Judaism and shares many of those values, but actually specifically American Christians that founded America explicitly said how much they were inspired by the Hebrew Bible. And they were actually, in some ways, revolting against the ways in which the Catholic Church in Europe had tried to prevent people becoming literate in the Bible, particularly the Hebrew Bible, to understand how it talks about the sanctity of human life. As the Declaration of Independence begins, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All human beings are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. It comes from the book of Genesis, that all human beings are created in the image of God, which means that they all have infinite value. So, look, whether you want to say Christian, Jewish, Judeo-Christian, ultimately it is simply ahistorical to ignore the truth that it was first the Jewish people, Judaism, the Torah, that articulated these ideas to the world. You know, he talks about Christianity, talks about turn the other cheek. I just want to remember what he said. Yeah, he says that Christianity teaches that one should love their enemies and praise for those who persecute them. I make absolutely no apology for Torah that teaches a Torah morality, a Jewish morality that says if someone rises to kill you, you kill them first. This is to say to love your enemy. What, we should love Hamas right now? They're holding our people hostage. We should love them. I am absolutely proud to say that Judaism rejects this notion of loving your enemy, because you end up hating those who are good, those who you love. and not making this world better. Part of that theology, I think, comes from a place of actually seeing this world as temporary, as irrelevant. Just love, 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 be kind, even though it ends up being cruel because you're not being kind to those who you need to protect. Because it sees this world as transient and says, well, we just want to get to the next world. Judaism's focus has always been on this world, because actually we're not trying to get there, we're trying to bring God down here. That's the purpose of creation. And so yes, when we see bad in this world, we're not just going to say, well, you turn the other cheek. No, we're going to stand up and do what we need to do to fix this world and eradicate evil. If you believe that this world can improve, can get better, then you believe in going to war. Not always necessarily militarily, but simply believing that we have to get rid of bad and rather improve it to make it good. We have to improve this world. That means you believe in war. That means you believe in not turning the other cheek, but actually standing up. There's absolutely nothing wrong. The Talmud, by the way, talk of the Talmud teaches that there was this rabbi who would pray for those who did evil. It's not that we shouldn't pray that people should change their ways, but when it comes to action, for as long as they don't change their ways, you should do, and it's absolutely moral and right and sane to protect yourself from people who choose to do evil. So you can pray for the world to become better and for people to change their evil ways, but you absolutely, Torah and Judaism teaches, you stand up and do what you need to do, and that's the way forward. So I think these are some really important things to clarify. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section. So much more to talk about. I love talking about theology, but for me, to dismiss the role that the Hebrew Bible played in Western civilization, particularly in America, is simply to be ignorant of history, and probably comes from other kind of prejudices that simply want to dismiss the Jewish people. And we won't stand for that. We're going to tell the truth on this channel. And so please do share this with other people, and let's make people more aware of reality. If you made it so far in this video, that means you probably appreciate the work we're doing at JTV to spread the truth about Israel and create positive associations with Jews, Judaism, and Israel for the entire world. I really believe that part of fighting anti-Semitism is to create pro-Semitism and share and inspire people with the truth. There's so much anti-Israel media, online channels, and I think that it's time we start competing with them. We're already having a big impact, but there's a lot more that we can do. I've got a plan, a vision, which is to start doing more documentaries, animated content, having more presenters like me doing other shows to really accelerate the growth and impact that we're having. The impact is really good, but there's even more we could be doing. So we're doing a crowdfunding campaign in order to fund that vision and to scale JTV. The question is, would you consider partnering with us? Would you consider donating to this crowdfunding campaign in order to partner with us in scaling JTV, partnering with us in spreading the truth of Israel, Judaism, and Jews to the entire world? If you would, please click on the donate button in the link below this video. The campaign's official launch is in a few days from now, but you can actually donate right now. So please click on the link if you want to partner with us in sharing the truth and spreading it to all corners of the world through the power of the internet. Again, click on the link in the video description of this video, and please support the work we're doing. I'd be so grateful for any support you're able to give, and you truly will become a partner with us in our mission.